war footing to see to that the number does not rise. And
right, Aisha. Right, Aisha, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us. And we go across now to Mumbai, where joining us is our correspondent Shishir Shelar. Shishir, well, Maharashtra, one of the worst affected states as far as India is concerned, but there are various challenges also as the country goes into day 6 of the 21-day lockdown, which has been assured is the only way to prevent the onslaught of COVID-19. How are authorities there coping? What about supply of essential items? Well, how is Mumbai shaping up? In this time of crisis, what about the centre's, also we'd like to know about the response to the centre's directive to seal the borders. Shishir, if you can hear me.
Well, absolutely, Aisha, as you rightly said, Mumbai is most affected, and that's the reason the government have taken extra precautions to tackle the situation here. Right now, I'm in Thane, and behind me you can see this machine. This machine actually sprays the disinfectant across the city here, and that's the reason that the Thane Municipal Corporation has bought this kind of machines here. I have actually given this support from the organization. The private companies have extended their support and have given this machine to spray disinfectant in across the Thane city. I want to show you the visuals here, basically how this exactly machine works here. Because if you look at the entire machines here right now.
Shishir Shelar from Mumbai giving us those visuals of efforts by the authorities to disinfect the environment, to disinfect the surroundings?
Absolutely. Right now we have with us Tushar Trivedi from Thane Municipal Corporation.
From UPL.
From the UPL. How does this machine work exactly?
So actually I am from UPL, and we are bringing this machine. We already, this is our Falcon machine. With the machines we are providing our operators, and we are giving this entire services free of cost to the municipal corporation.
How far this area has covered so far?
So we have almost covered around 8 kilometers of area since yesterday evening, and within a day we can cover almost around 35 kilometer area, and that is which we are starting from today morning. That almost around 7 kilometers we have covered, and for entire day, working day and night, what we are thinking that entire Thane Municipal Corporation area we can cover within next 3 to 4 days.
What is the result do you see of this machine here?
So basically, you know, like it is a decent.
Well, thank you very much, Shishir, for those details, for that update. So in every state, in every union territory across the country, all hands on board as the fight against COVID-19 continues. It's day 6 of the 21-day lockdown. That's all we have in this special edition of Tracking COVID-19. And as we wrap up, we leave you with these glimpses, with these visuals of precautions that have to be taken at this time. Experts from AIIMS New Delhi shared some basic steps on hand washing to fight coronavirus. Take a look. Namaskar.
Hand wash should take about 1 minute. Before you begin, remove all your jewelries or count from 1 to 10 in each steps. Wet hands with water and apply enough soap to cover all surfaces of the hands. Let water run smoothly to avoid touching the tap. Rub hands palm to palm to obtain a good quantity of foam. Rub right palm over back of left hand with interlaced fingers and vice versa. Rub again palm to palm with fingers interlaced. Rub back of fingers to opposing palms with fingers interlocked, repeating this action for each hand. Rub rotationally left thumb clasped in right palm and vice versa. To clean tips of fingers, rub rotationally backwards and forwards with clasped fingers of right hand over left palm and vice versa. Rinse thoroughly with running water. Dry hands thoroughly with a single-use towel. If tap is not elbow operated, use this towel to turn off the tap without touching directly. Your hands are now clean and safe.
India is a spectacular adventure destination, especially for trekkers who will find some of the most challenging and enthralling trekking routes in the country. One of the choice destinations for trekkers is the picturesque state of Sikkim in the eastern Himalayas. Starting at Yuksum, the base camp for the Singalila trek, the high-altitude alpine trek offers some spectacular views throughout its 13-mile route. To add a cultural aspect to your trek, visit some of Sikkim's monasteries. The trek ends at Zongri, where trekkers can take a break before making their way back along the same route.
Yeah, I like nature, and I want to walk in the hills just to see the differences between the nature here in Sikkim and my home country.
When trekkers reach the state of Jammu and Kashmir, they know they are in adventure paradise. For the die-hard trekker, Ladakh, renowned for its remote mountain beauty and culture, offers the most picturesque and challenging treks in northern India. Its high mountain passes will give you a wonderful view of the mountains and amazing landscapes. Here you can add river rafting to your itinerary and make it more adventurous. Kishtwar and Bhadarwar regions in Jammu are also endowed with excellent trekking routes. The thick blanket of snow on the mountain peaks and the undulating terrain has amazed many a trekker.
So I myself would recommend this to anyone, especially foreigners, because it's so different than our country. In the country I come from, it's very flat, no big mountains like this. So this is most beautiful to experience, this undulation and the wild scenery.
Sanasar near Jammu also offers another exciting trekking experience. But if you want to add on to the thrill, try parasailing and rock climbing. It's not just the sun and the white sandy beaches that Goa has to offer. The Western Ghats in Goa is where the adventure is. Just 43 miles from the state capital Panjim, trekkers can go to Surla and discover the unexplored areas in the rain-drenched deciduous forests.
Well, I've been coming here for the last 3 years, and I really love this place. It's one of the most beautiful spots in Goa. Most people are not aware of it. And I like to come here because of the fresh air, the beautiful view.
India is becoming a hotspot for adventure tourism. With the growing popularity of trekking, the market for trekking equipment has grown, and thrill seekers can get sleeping bags, rucksacks and camping tents easily. And there are numerous tour operators offering trekking tour packages. If you are fascinated by the unexplored, then the mountain ranges of India are just what you need for your next trek.
The nationwide lockdown has been ordered in India to prevent the spread of the virus. At this critical juncture, it is crucial that we are empowered with all the facts and updates about this outbreak. In this special presentation, Tracking COVID-19, we will take stock of developments in India and rest of the world.
At a time when the nation is unitedly combating COVID-19, the medical fraternity is at the forefront of this fight. They are putting their own lives at risk to save the lives of others. So how challenging are these times for the medical fraternity, and what do we as a nation and as individuals need to do to keep ourselves safe and healthy? To talk about all that and more, we have with us Director AIIMS Delhi, Dr. Randeep Guleria. We are at his residence on the AIIMS campus. Welcome, Dr. Guleria, to DD India.
Thank you.
I saw a placard on Twitter. It was held by a doctor and it read, "I stay at work for you, you stay at home for me." That's powerful messaging. On the day of the Janata curfew, we saw how the entire nation saluted the selfless service being rendered by health professionals. The Prime Minister, the Health Minister have underscored the dedication of people like you who are part of the health fraternity. Are these challenging times for the medical fraternity, and is it also an opportunity for you to learn and prepare for the future?
So both these are challenging times for the health fraternity, because this is a time when the health system is being challenged. The healthcare workers are at the front line about a disease that they are scared about, they don't know that much about it, and they are worried about their own lives and the lives of their dear ones. It's also something that is a process of learning, because this is an outbreak which is unprecedented in history, or in our lifetime at least, and preparing for it and preparing for the future, building up our health resources in a short span of time, and how do we cope in this moment of crisis is something that we're all learning every day.
India is currently in lockdown for 21 days. How crucial are these 21 days in this fight against COVID-19, and what's the logic behind 21 days per se?
So first of all, it's important to understand that this is a disease which is through human to human spread. What that means is that if you have to break the chain of transmission, we have to stop this human to human spread, and that means spreading from one individual to the other, which can occur only through social contact, coming closer, or being in a crowd where we have a large number of cases. If we are able to have a total lockdown and individuals stay at home and follow it sincerely, then this will stop. The virus has an incubation period of about 14 days, and if we allow 14 days of total lockdown and we give another week, so that in case there is someone who has a little bit of a prolonged incubation period, we will be able to prevent that transmission to another individual during that incubation period. Having said that, it's important to understand that as it goes from one person to the other person incubation period would be for another 14 days. And that's why the duration of the lockdown may change or get extended after 21 days, depending on where we are on the curve. We must understand that actually by having the lockdown, we are not going to be able to totally eliminate the disease or eliminate coronavirus, but we will be able to bend the curve. In other words, if we don't do anything, the number of cases will rise sharply, we will have a huge peak, and this will cause a strain on the health system. If we are able to have a very aggressive lockdown, we may be able to limit the number of cases. The peak which is going up like this in US, in Italy, may become less, and the number of cases may become lesser and prolonged over some time, and the healthcare facility therefore will be able to manage with these cases. Our mortality will be less, our health resources would be optimally used. So this lockdown is of utmost importance as a measures to prevent transmission. But when I keep saying it's important for everyone to understand his responsibility and follow the lockdown sincerely. If they don't do that, then transmission chain will not be broken.
Where do we stand as of now in terms of community spread? How far do you think we are from stage 3, or are we in a grey zone? And any estimate in terms of numbers or percentages that what could happen after 21 days?
So currently I would say that we are in between the two stages, and the reason why I'm saying this is that if you look at
days.
So currently I would say that we are in between the two stages, and the reason why I'm saying this is that if you look at the news or if you look at data coming from various health agencies, we do hear of few cases who've had no travel abroad, or who have had no contact, apparent contact with a positive case, and are positive, and they may have spread it to a few more individuals. So there is some sort of suspicion that they may be minor but early community spread, and that is why the lockdown becomes even more and more important. If we don't do this lockdown, like I said before, we will have a huge surge in the number of cases, and that is why it is more and more important for everyone to follow this lockdown.
We are at your home, we are following social distancing, all our crew members are following that. While staying at home, how do you follow social distancing? How do you keep your home disinfected, and do you maintain hand and respiratory hygiene?
So there are 2 or 3 very important things, and the important thing is to understand how does this virus spread. It's a droplet infection. If I have coronavirus and I cough, the droplets of my cough will carry the virus in the air. It cannot go very far, not more than a meter. So it will stay just for some time in the air, and if someone comes in very close contact with me and I am coughing, he can inhale the virus and it goes into his respiratory tract. The other more common way is surfaces. If I cough and the virus is in the air, after some time those droplets will settle on a surface. Also, if I am coughing and I don't use a handkerchief and I am not careful, I touch my nose and mouth, the virus will come to my hands, and any surface that I touch with my hands, if I don't clean my hands, I will transmit the virus to that surface. If I do that, then that virus can stay for a few hours on that surface, and anyone who touches that surface after me will get the virus on his hands, and if he touches his nose or mouth or face, the virus will reach his respiratory tract. So the important issue here is not only social distancing, but regular hand washing. So if you are outside and you come home, please wash your hands regularly, wash them properly. If you have surfaces which you feel people may have touched, use an antiseptic to clean them. Maintain good cleanliness in your house, and if you go out and every few hours, do wash your hands so that you don't carry the virus home and give it to others. So that is the most important message, and that is what each one at his residence or house should do. Some degree of social distancing, but I do agree that it's not possible for everyone in India to do it. We have people who live in just one small houses where there's just one room or one bedroom. But even if you can't have a very good social distancing, at least you can clean your surfaces, clean your doorknobs, and you can also wash your hands, and the whole family member can wash their hands regularly. I would go ahead and say that you should make this a ritual, that everyone comes together like some sort of a social activity and washes their hands together, which will, and you can make a song out of it while you do it, so that it becomes an entertaining thing while you're sitting at home and doing nothing else. Wash your hands and do it in a sort of in a game manner or in a musical manner, but keep doing it regularly.
There is a lot of information that's flowing in social media on COVID-19. Not all of that is necessarily right or authentic. So would you like to address some of them, and we could do it in a rapid fire round, so to say. So like you said that, one can do this hand washing exercise in an entertaining manner. Prolonged home stays can take a toll on mental health. So how can these 21 days at home become 21 days of happiness?
So it's a very good question, and I would say that prolonged homestay can have effect both on physical health and as far as mental health is concerned. If you look at mental health, it's because you're staying at home in a closed environment. We're lucky at this point in time that we are living in a society where technology is there to a large extent. And if we have a lot of technology, we can still stay in contact with friends, with people who are not only in India but abroad, and stay in touch with them. We can see movies if you want, we can read books. I would say there are a lot of activities that one can do which one would have postponed because of the work, his work schedule and being busy. All of that we can actually take up and do right now. Regarding physical health, it's important that we have an exercise schedule. In India, we do a lot of yoga, so I think regularly we should have a schedule of doing yoga in the morning. People have made walking tracks in their house itself, and they would walk 10, 20 or 50 times in the morning, and that is also a good exercise.
Are there any differentiation that one can make between a seasonal flu and COVID-19 symptoms?
So the differentiation is actually very difficult. Some people would argue that if you have dry cough, it is more for COVID-19. If you have running nose, it's more for flu. These are very subtle features. There is no real definite difference between the two, and that is why it becomes more and more challenging, because as you can see, the weather today is also overcast, it's cloudy. This is the type of weather where cold, common flu and a lot of viral infections actually become more, and therefore people worry that if I have a running nose, cold, do I have COVID-19? I would say that you should not worry. The chances in our country, if you have not come from abroad, if you have not come in close contact with a positive case, currently are very, very low. Just stay at home, just take your cold medicines and rest, and you will be all right. Don't panic.
If I knowingly or unknowingly come in contact with, say, a COVID-19 positive case, what should I do?
So if you have come in contact with a COVID-19 positive case, knowingly or unknowingly, stay at home, quarantine yourself for 14 days. Don't become part of the chain of spreading the disease, not only to society but to your near and dear ones. Regularly wash your hands, use cough etiquettes, cover your cough. If you don't have a tissue or a handkerchief, cough into your armpit. If you have a tissue, cough into the tissue and dispose it properly. And try and maintain social distance, or at least a distance of 1 meter, especially from children or elderly or people who have comorbid conditions like diabetes, hypertension, heart or respiratory diseases. Let me again say that even if you get infected with COVID-19, there is a more than 80% chance that you will only have a mild illness and you will recover without any problem, because in majority of individuals, more than 80% of individuals, it's like a common flu and cold and people recover from it. It's only around 15 to 20% of people who get COVID-19 who need to be admitted, and of those, it's around 10 to 15 or 20% who actually need to go to the ICU, and those are elderly, those with comorbidities. So in younger people, actually the disease tends to be much more milder, and it is not associated with higher mortality or morbidity.
Who can wear masks, and can these masks be made at home and used?
So I would say everyone doesn't need to wear a mask. If you're normal, healthy, no cough, no need to wear a mask. You should actually just be careful about going to crowded areas, and like I said, stay at home, wash your hands. Healthcare workers need to wear a mask. If you are working in various other places where there is a chance of coming in close contact, you can wear a mask. And you have the 3-layered surgical mask, you have the N95 mask. The N95 mask is required only in areas where actually in close contact with COVID positive patients. So everyone doesn't need to wear N95 mask. We are actually misusing the masks, and we will run out of these masks, and healthcare workers who actually need these masks to protect themselves will not be able to get them. The other important thing to remember is that you can make masks out of clothes, and if you are very worried, you can wear them even if it gives you a sense of security, but it's not really required.
There are emergency service providers who are stepping out of their homes and providing services, health professionals being one of those emergency service provider categories. There are also journalists, there are drivers, there are sanitation workers, among others. Any safeguards that they should follow?
So again, same thing, social distancing. There are people who have to go outside because they are part of the team which has to provide support, whether it be electricity, sanitation, healthcare workers or policemen, or the media people for that point of view. My advice is, again, wash your hands regularly, maintain social distancing, and be careful. If someone has cough and cold or fever and he is in this group, he should stay at home and not go to work.
Have any instances come to the fore of people showing no symptoms at all and just being carriers of infection?
So there are now reports of mild asymptomatic individuals who can have this symptoms, but they are very few, and therefore its chance of transmission in that group is less. But yes, you can have very mild symptoms which you will ignore, and you may still have the infection and may be able to transfer it to other people.
Reports have come to the fore, Dr. Guleria, of how health workers in India have contracted the virus. Then you see pictures of Italian nurses, doctors and paramedics on social media with bruised faces because of the long hours for which they wear personal protective equipment. What precautions are health workers in India taking or should take in these testing times?
So my advice is, and we are doing that in our hospital, all healthcare workers, and I say all because you don't know when you will be called to do COVID duty, should get good training in infection control measures, whether it be wearing a PPE, whether it be wearing washing your hands, protecting yourselves. because all of us or many healthcare workers have not been trained in good personal protection equipment management, infection control management. This is an infectious disease. So if you are suddenly the frontline warriors in this battle, you have to have good measures to protect yourself.
Well, as you can see, the weather is overcast, it's drizzling already, so it's the right time to take a breather. We'll be back. We are in conversation with AIIMS Director Delhi, Dr. Randeep Guleria, on COVID-19.
We bring to you a panel of doctors who will bust all the myths and doubts on COVID-19. In this hour-long program, you can ask questions from our panelists.
We have to make sure that all of us stay at home. It is very important that we make contact with other people as minimum as possible.
Follow this hand hygiene practice each time you go and wash your hands, and soap and water is the best.
You have traveled to outside for 14 days to the affected countries, or you have been in contact with a patient of COVID-19 proven case, then only you may require test, otherwise you don't have to.
Welcome back. We are in conversation with the Director of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi, Dr. Randeep Guleria. We are at his residence on the AIIMS campus discussing with him the outbreak of COVID-19 and its implications for India. Dr. Guleria, it's raining, we can see. Any link that is there between the life of the virus and temperatures? Also, does gargling with warm water or drinking warm water or keeping yourself warm help prevent the infection?
So first of all, there has been a lot of interest because a lot of viral infections have what we call seasonality. Influenza is one viral infection which has the seasonality. In India, it's more during the winter months and during the monsoon months. But for coronavirus in general, that has not been observed, and this is a novel virus for which no inherent immunity is present in the community. Therefore, as of now, it's difficult to say that there will be any seasonal variation or the weather will make a big difference. As far as gargling is concerned, there is really no role in terms of it decreasing the virus. The virus gets into the cells or gets into the cells in the throat. So even if you gargle outside, it's not going to kill the intracellular, the virus that's inside the cell. So garglings really don't help. People try a lot of what I would say is local means to protect themselves. Some of them are to improve your immunity, and they may help, but there's no real data to support it.
Before going into the break, you had spoken about how it is important for health workers to be trained into how to tackle COVID-19 patients and keep themselves safe. I understand that AIIMS is playing a central role, not just in testing samples and treating patients, but also in capacity building and training. Tell us about your role.
We have looked at it from not only our own institute point of view, but from a national point of view. So in terms of training, we've started what we call regular webinars for all doctors in the government sector, in the private sector, on how to manage patients with COVID-19, what COVID-19 is all about. We've made, so this is for doctors, we've made a lot of video clips on hand washing, how to wear a PPE, how to take a PPE off, other measures like social distancing, that can be done, that should be followed by the lay public. So for them, we made some small video clips to put up on our on our website, also for the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. We are also launching a central portal, which is basically for COVID-19 technical team of specialists who will be able to help doctors in different areas if they have problem in managing these patients. So this is a central line where a doctor can consult the specialist through a phone, through video conferencing, through WhatsApp, and this is linked to will be linked to all the medical colleges, the medical colleges, the government medical colleges in the country. This will be one common number, which will have multiple links, and anyone can ring up and consult a specialist regarding management of COVID-19.
AIIMS Jhajjar is now exclusively dedicated to COVID-19, and various states are coming up with dedicated hospitals after such directives were given by the centre. Will this reduce the patient burden on other hospitals like maybe yours?
It will. We have also come out with another plan. If we have a huge number of cases, the trauma center will be converted to a COVID hospital with the burns and plastic surgery center, which is partially ready, becoming a triage area, and the ICUs there will also be COVID ICUs. So that plan is also in place. In case we have a need, and in our Mayor campus, we will convert that into a COVID hospital and shift all our traumas to the main hospital.
AIIMS OPD services have been closed for now. What can the patients who already taken appointments or those who need consultation do at this stage?
So again, that is a good question. This is another thing that we're working on, and what we have decided is a mechanism of what we call teleconsultation or e-consultation. So yesterday only we rolled this out. Yesterday our Department of Neurology looked at all the patients who had taken an appointment and their contact numbers, and they could call them up and provided a consultation to them through phone, and each department is being given a dedicated phone, and we will either contact our patients or we will put the number out on our website, so that if you have an appointment or if you are an old patient of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and you want to consult a doctor in a particular department, you could do that, and by using that phone you would be able to advise you. Because you should understand, although we are making arrangements for COVID-19, non-COVID-19 healthcare should not suffer also, and that includes follow-up patients, but that also includes patients who have an acute problem. We cannot ignore a patient who comes with a heart attack to the casualty, or a person who comes with stroke, or a person who has respiratory difficulty which is not COVID related. They also need to be cared for.
Instances have come to the fore of discrimination being faced by health professionals, with landlords evicting many nurses, doctors and paramedics, accusing them of being carriers of infection to their homes. After that, we saw the Prime Minister warning of strict action against such offenders, and there is a medical cover that has just recently been announced for 3 months of 50 lakh rupees. Is all this reassuring?
It is reassuring, but I would still appeal to the public, and I'll say this, that just clapping your hands on Sunday was not enough. Our healthcare workers are actually putting their lives at stake for you. They're willing to work 24/7 for patient care. That's why we joined this profession. But at the same time, the discrimination that they're facing is very, very worrying. There are students who come to me who are staying outside, that the landlord is not allowing them inside. One student came and told me that landlord has actually locked the lift because he's worried that if I touch the lift, I will give the infection, so I have to climb 5 floors every day because I'm not being allowed to use the lift. And you already have mentioned stories of people not being allowed inside there by the colony. So one nursing staff said that the RWA didn't allow them inside the colony. I can't understand that. That person is helping out, and he should be cheered by the colony rather than not being allowed into a colony because he's working in a hospital. But unfortunately, the panic that has been created is so much, and people are not knowledgeable that this is not a disease which spreads like this.
Well, that realization, like you said, urgently needs to set in. Now, India is a country that has a large population and limited resources, yet we've maintained an edge to begin with in terms of containment measures. How can India maintain that lead compared to developed countries that were caught in this quagmire?
So I think India had one advantage, that we had time to prepare, and we still have some time in preparing our health facilities, our resources, and at the same time being able to see what we can do as far as preparedness is concerned. The second thing that we need to do now is testing. We need to upscale our testing, test a larger number of people so that we don't miss out on community spread, and be able to say that yes, the disease is not there significantly, or if we have a disease in certain area, then be able to strictly have a lockdown there so that it doesn't spread to other parts of the country. And at the same time, train, provide adequate infrastructure so that our healthcare facilities are ready to take an increasing surge of patients if that happens.
In terms of testing, we know that indiscriminate testing is not taking place at this point in time. The testing criteria has been expanded. Private labs are also testing other than government labs. The government says it has a testing capacity weekly of 50,000 to 70,000 tests. Does that need to change, expand it further, a relook needed there?
So it's an evolving strategy. Currently, the strategy is based on what is the need. We started off with looking at people coming from outside and their close contacts, and testing was done for them. Then the testing has expanded to people who have severe acute respiratory infection and who are admitted in the hospital, and healthcare workers. gradually I think the testing will further expand to look up, to pick up any community spread if that may be happening. So that is the other thing that we need to do, and gradually this will happen over a period of time. The issue is, one is diagnosis of patients who have COVID-19, the other is answering questions, and the most important question that I think testing will give us if we do it in terms of surveillance testing is, how long should the lockdown stay? And that depends what is the spread among people in the community, and if that spread is significant, then the lockdown may have to stay on for a longer period of time. On the other hand, if by testing we come to know that the cases actually have come down, there is now minimal or no community spread, then we could actually consider a graded decrease in the lockdown.
Absolutely. This ringing of bells that we can hear in the background reminds me of the 5-minute 5 p.m. applause that was there for people like you. There is a lot of interest worldwide in a drug called hydroxychloroquine. Donald Trump has called it a game changer. Who can use it?
It's still an experimental drug. The data for its use is limited. A lot of data is based on what I call in vitro data, cell culture data, animal studies. There is only one small study from France which looked at moderate to sick patients and showed that it was useful. So we have limited data as far as it's concerned. However, we have nothing else to offer, and because of that, after a lot of deliberations, the government decided that we should look at two categories. One is healthcare workers who are treating COVID patients, because as we've been saying repeatedly, they are in the front line and they're at risk. And if we can provide some drug which is safe and may be effective, let me put this in a may be effective, it's worth taking that risk. Secondly is close contacts of COVID positive patients, because as you see even in our country, the maximum number of cases are either those who have come from outside or their close contacts. So they also, if we can sort of provide some treatment to them, we may be able to break the chain of spread as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But currently there is not enough data to say that this can be widely used, and like any other drug, this drug also has side effects.
So it can't be used as an over-the-counter drug?
It cannot be used as an over-the-counter. It has side effects which can be cardiac, and therefore if someone has an underlying heart problem, we have to be careful about using it. And if we are using it in healthy people, we have to be careful that we don't do more harm than good. If we are using it in sick people, we have to be careful that this works and it's not causing more side effects which can have an effect on the overall outcome.
Where does the world stand in terms of R&D for vaccine? Any indigenous leads that India may have made in this sphere?
So the world is working as one in developing vaccines. A number of trials are ongoing, number of vaccines are being tried. India has isolated the virus, and there are interest in Indian vaccine manufacturers to see whether they can develop a vaccine. The important thing to remember is it will take some time. Whenever you are developing a vaccine, first of all you develop a vaccine, then you see whether this vaccine is effective or not, is efficacious. There is no point having a vaccine which works only, has an efficacy of 10 to 20%. You need a vaccine which is at least 70 to 80% effective. Then the vaccine has to be safe. Safety studies have to be done. The vaccine itself should not cause harm. You will be giving it to people who are not that symptomatic. And then at the end of the day, you have to produce it in large amounts. So mass production. So if you look at all of this, it will take, in my mind, at least 1 year for us to get a good vaccine in the market, going through stages of efficacy, safety and mass production.
AIIMS, known for its research capabilities, does it plan to do any R&D or documentation on COVID-19?
So AIIMS has already started, and we as a research institute have called for proposals. We are looking at various studies. It could be looking at rapid point of care test. Can we have a rapid test which is being used abroad in China and Korea? How useful is it to diagnose infection in less than an hour by using just a drop of blood? Can we look at various strategies which tell us what is happening in the body in terms of inflammatory markers, cytokines, and then drug trials? Can we look at drug trials and then vaccine trials? So AIIMS has already started various research protocols and rolling them out.
You work all 7 days a week like most health professionals do. How do you unwind, especially during these testing times, and what would you suggest to your colleagues?
So I would suggest that this is a time of stress. So we need to do things to de-stress ourselves. It could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be spending more time with the family, and that's easier to do now because everyone is at home, and also trying to see, do things that you like. I like to read books, so you could spend time reading a novel or a book, but currently it's a very trying time, not getting any time to do any of these things.
Well, thank you, Dr. Guleria. It was a pleasure to have you on DD India.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. The coronavirus pandemic has plunged the world into a crisis. Thousands of people have died worldwide, including in South Asia. Governments are scrambling to contain the spread of coronavirus. There is no vaccine available yet against this virus. What's the economic impact of coronavirus on the world economy? Will governments set aside their politics and join hands in the fight against coronavirus? Can diplomacy help? Now, 4 months into the coronavirus outbreak, we are struggling for answers. We know what the problems are, but the world desperately needs solutions. So we thought we'll focus at the intersection of politics, economics and diplomacy so that you, the viewer, know what it takes to be on top of the news. Two guests join me in the studio to help break it down for you. Let me introduce them to you. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, Chairperson of RIS and a former Indian ambassador to France, and Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Chairperson of IIFT. Let's get started. But first, I want to bring you up to date on the news so far. Coronavirus is spreading rapidly. It's forcing governments to impose restrictions rarely seen outside wartime. Closing borders, ordering home quarantine, and scrapping public events, including major sporting fixtures. Now, Italy, the hardest hit nation in Europe, announced another surge in deaths. The second most affected country outside China is Iran. Now, some Iranian officials have died. Some cabinet ministers, lawmakers, and military officers have caught the virus as well. Now, Spain also announced that it would seal off its land borders. Spain has officially become the third most infected country outside China, surpassing South Korea as its arc of contagion curved higher. While in France, over half of the country's coronavirus patients in intensive care are under the age of 60. The country is the fourth worst hit in Europe. Now, in China, the disease is on the decline, indicating that the course of the outbreak there has been altered. Now, social distancing is the new catchphrase. The Indian government has told states to shut schools, gymnasia and cinemas. It's encouraged private companies to let its employees work from home where feasible in an effort to reduce the possibility of spreading coronavirus infection within the community.
Social distancing measures as a preventive strategy has been proposed for implementation. These interventions are proposed to be enforced till 31st of March 2020. Closure of all educational institutions, schools, universities, etc., gyms, museums, cultural and social centers, swimming pools and theatres. In public transport, besides ensuring regular and proper disinfection of surfaces. Encourage private sector organizations, employers, to allow employees to work from home wherever feasible.
Now, Prime Minister Modi has asked people to share technology-driven solutions for coronavirus. In a tweet, he said that a lot of people have been sharing technology-driven solutions for COVID-19. He urged them to share it on citizen engagement platform MyGov India, saying the efforts can help many. He said that innovation should be harnessed for a healthier planet. Meanwhile, the coronavirus outbreak has spooked some world markets. US President Donald Trump said that he was focused on addressing the health crisis and that the economy would get better once that was in line. He said that the worst of the virus could be over by July, August, or even later. He called it an invisible enemy.
Well, it may be. We're not thinking in terms of recession. We're thinking in terms of the virus. Once we stop, I think there's a tremendous pent-up demand, both in terms of the stock market and in terms of the economy. And once this goes away, once it goes through and we're done with it, I think you're going to see a tremendous surge.
Meanwhile, in a major development, the first human trial to evaluate a candidate vaccine against coronavirus disease has begun in Seattle, in the U.S.
I'm also pleased to report today that a vaccine candidate has begun the phase 1 clinical trial. This is one of the fastest vaccine development launches in history, not even close. We're also racing to develop antiviral therapies and other treatments, and we've had some promising results, early results, but promising, to reduce the severity and the duration of the symptoms. And I have to say that our government is prepared to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, we're doing. We're doing it in every way.
And across the Atlantic in Europe, European Council President Charles Michel has called for another EU summit on coronavirus response through video conference. The EU 27 leaders held a virtual summit last week, during which they called for a coordinated response orchestrated by the European Commission, member states and the European Central Bank. All right, let me bring in my guests for a discussion on COVID-19 diplomacy, economics and politics behind it all. Ambassador Mohan Kumar and Professor Joshi, if I can start with you, Ambassador Kumar. Your take on the diplomatic efforts undertaken by India and the world at large to contain and combat COVID-19.
So thank you very much for having me on the show. I think without diplomacy, it's almost impossible to really tackle and confront this crisis jointly. So even countries like US and China, or China and Taiwan for that matter, countries which may otherwise have an adversarial relationship in normal times, are forced to share their experiences. So in a way, diplomacy gets a boost, if you like, not because it is the preferred course of action, because it is almost the necessary course of action. More importantly, I think countries also tend to think that there is no way this issue can be beaten without multilateral cooperation. In that sense, I also find multilateral diplomacy getting a boost. We talked of areas where multilateralism was on the decline before the coronavirus. I think this issue has brought back multilateralism in sharp relief, because issues like coronavirus, cybersecurity, terrorism, etc., simply cannot be handled without multilateral cooperation. So I do believe diplomacy will have an extremely important role to play. Just the evacuation of nationals from China, from Iran, from other countries, which I think you would have to say, even the worst critic of the government of India has to say that the Indian government has done wonderfully well to evacuate the Indian nationals who were there in some of these crisis-ridden countries. And even that calls for very deft diplomacy, because we not only evacuated our nationals, we made an offer to South Asia that other country nationals, Maldives and Bangladesh and Sri Lankan nationals, have been evacuated by us. So I can go on, but you get the drift of what I'm saying. I think it's brought diplomacy and multilateral cooperation back center stage, in my view.
Indeed. Professor Joshi, Ambassador Kumar dealt with the diplomatic aspect of the coronavirus, the efforts to contain it. If I were to ask you to help our viewers understand the economic impact of coronavirus on the Indian economy and the world economy at large.
You know, I've got a very different point to say what Ambassador Kumar has said, because I think it is basically the integration of value chains and the global value chains, global network, which has created havoc in the entire system now across the world. Now multilateralism, I'll come later.
Sure.
If you see now, the China account for 20% share in the global value chain, and from 2002 the China's share in the value chain was 4%. Now it has come to 20%. Everything, even India is one of the largest exporter of the generic medicines, but for raw material, for a lot of things we are dependent on China. So it is not only India. China is the largest supplier of mask which is required now. 50% of the world mask comes from China. China, getting out of the whole thing because of this problem. So entire world economic system is absolutely disrupted, and people are finding it difficult to find the solution. Now India. So two things. China is the largest exporter in the world with 13% share. Last year it was 14%, 14% share in the world market. More importantly, the China also manufactures and supplies a lot of manufactured goods. So the entire value system has come to. Now I think it's a time for cooperation, not conflict. But when you come to multilateral conflict, we are talking of the, you have seen soon before the, coronavirus issue, there was a big fight between US and China, which we are discussing for last 2 years, is the US-China trade war. Now the whole European Union came basically to integrate the European Union. But in English there is a big saying that I think we should remember right now: a friend in need is a friend indeed. And Italy is probably the worst impacted country. Last 2 days it is having more than 350-360 deaths of coronavirus. Now when Italy requires the medical assistance, the members of the European Union are reluctant to give them the medical assistance. So this is the whole concept. Even 2 days before, the president of the European Union and the Euro Bank, they have said that Italy's currency and the euro integration, those questions are being raised. So I am very skeptical about the kind of the cooperation which is, and ultimately then it comes that there is no shortcut to the self-sufficiency of any of the countries. You have to ride over these things, and in this, fortunately, probably India is not as integrated as China is, and therefore our impact is going to be much lower than the impact going to be on China is on the entire system.
Indeed. Point well taken, Professor Joshi. Ambassador Kumar, Prime Minister Modi has taken the initiative to convene a video conference of all SAARC member countries. He's also reached out to the G20, saying the G20 might be the appropriate global fora to take up efforts, to have joint efforts to combat and contain coronavirus. So in that context, given the given that multilateralism is gaining currency in the context of COVID-19 efforts, what role do you see for organizations such as SAARC, G20, or even SCO for that matter, to learn from the best practices and experiences of various countries?
So I'll begin with the SAARC,
sure,
if you will, because this is an organization that was practically written off. It was moribund, and I'm putting it as mildly as I can, and so on. But I think the fact that Prime Minister Modi has chosen to use this forum is very, very interesting from an ex-diplomat's point of view, from my perspective. I mean, he could have used several other fora. There was BIMSTEC, there were so many other things that he could have done. But I think the fact that he highlighted South Asia as one geographical entity, I think it sends a message that no matter what your differences, and we know there are significant differences among South Asian countries, not just India, Pakistan, but other countries as well. I think he used the SAARC to say that maybe this is the forum to deal with issues like the coronavirus or the COVID-19. And I think this will take us back to the good old times when South Asia was really integrated and it was a geographical entity unified in itself. The issue about G20 is slightly different, and I think it speaks to the enormous clout that the G20 now has. Whichever way you look at it, economically, population-wise, just geopolitical clout, it is G20 today, not the UN Security Council. So if you want to talk about global problems and devising global solutions, So whether it's terrorism, the Financial Action Task Force, the Osaka track of the cybersecurity, I think G20 is almost an automatic choice. So I'm not at all surprised there that the Prime Minister spoke about G20. And I think I would say that in a very soft sort of way, multilateral fora will get a new lease of life. This is at least my view. And my view is that I'm convinced no matter how much integrated you are not, the fact of the matter is India has such a long border with China. We have a long border with Myanmar. We have a long border with Bangladesh. And we, of course, have a border with Pakistan. I simply don't see how India can become an island. I'm not even mentioning the open border with Nepal, by the way. So we really can't afford to think that, we can get through this just on our own. So I think you need to think of ways in which you can use different multilateral fora. And by the way, we're just seeing the beginning of it. So SAARC and G20 are automatic choices maybe. There will be other fora which may come in handy, where I think the countries can get together and devise ways. If nothing else, I would strongly argue that we must look at how countries like China, South Korea, Japan, Singapore have dealt with this. Because we seem to be going through a phase which those countries went through a month ago. So we are actually fortunate that we've got a bit of lead time, and that we can actually look to these countries about how they did. I mean, you've heard this theory from physicians that the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4, it seems to be a matter of consensus that India is in stage 2. So before local transmission becomes community transmission, I think we really have a lot of best practices to gain from countries like South Korea, Japan and China.
Indeed. Professor Joshi, let's talk a bit, if you will, and focus on the economic costs and consequences of the coronavirus outbreak. There are reports about fears of airlines going bust in the next few months. There is talk about the Chinese industrial output dropping for the first time in many, many years. There are fears of the impact on the service industry, tourism industry. What are the fears, pitfalls of dealing with a crisis of this magnitude for countries such as India?
I think the most important driving force during this crisis is going to be the fear rather than any other thing.
I see.
Now, something which is driving the slump in the economy is probably the fear psychosis among the people. Now, fear, one is the real fear, one is the perceived fear. And for the perceived fear, what is very important is, let's not sensationalize the entire issue. And that way, I'm very sure what government is doing is, we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared. There is no shortcut to our preparedness and everything. But the fear psychosis we need to contain, and not only we, but in the entire world. You have seen a few days before in Australia, or a toilet paper, there was a fight and somebody was murdered. Across the world, people are fighting and crimes have increased just to get shortages and more of the fear psychosis. Now the people have started hoarding the things, not only India but across the world, in view of the fear psychosis. Not the shortage today, but shortage tomorrow. And I think many channels and news and everybody is saying that you hoard the food, you hoard the sanitizers, you hoard the medicines, and hoarding in the personal capacity, and the B is hoarding by the retailers and the wholesalers who has to make more profit. So I think this not only we can enter into a vicious cycle that I think we need to look into. When it comes to preparedness, I think two things. One, I think so far so good. The government of India has done wonderfully well, because I think we have done only 130, 132 cases at the most, and we have done much better. Even I don't want to be claim as our success, but I think God is also with us, because the Prime Minister Modi has shown a big courage to bring so many of the Indians from Iran, Milan, China, where our neighbor has not done. But I think the number of cases in our neighbor has increased much more than India. So I think God is certainly with us, and God will always be with us. So this way, I think the preparedness and the way we have done the isolation. But when it comes to the economy, because you know, when you struggle all economic activities, which include the transport, travel, advisories, which says close the schools, public places, shopping malls. So slump is already there. And slump is going to be much more than I think what the economic forecast you see. And nobody is sure of when it is going to end. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 quarter, 2 quarter, or a full year. So in case it ends maybe 3 or 4 months in 1 quarter, the economic slump would be great, but I think we'll come back. But God forbid that, like the Spanish flu in 1918-19, it goes for one full say year, then I think it would be devastating, not only for India but for the entire human human humanization.
Indeed.
At the most.
Indeed.
And that I think we need to look into.
Sure.
And with that, 2 things: the preparedness, the precaution, and we are talking of isolation. But I think there is a different scientific theory. In Britain, what they have said is, the British scientist has said is that in case you allow the people to have more infection, what they call is the herd infection, then the people will have immunity and the pandemic will die automatically.
Sure.
So that is one school of thought which except for Britain nobody is following. But because of this isolation, when the people don't develop immunity, it may come. So anyway, it is to be debated scientifically, but we do not know. And ultimately, we need to believe, the God.
Right. Ambassador Kumar, let's focus a bit, if you will, on the politics behind this coronavirus outbreak. Let's refer to the case of the diplomatic row between China and the US. There are trading charges saying the other is responsible for this crisis. We've seen the Americans summon the Chinese ambassador to the US after reports suggested that America may have had a hand in the outbreak of the coronavirus. And the second report is a more recent one in which there are reports which have since been denied, but they are still circulating in the media, that Americans wanted to lean on a German company which is in the process of coming out with a vaccine, and they wanted this vaccine only for exclusive use of the Americans. So what do you make of this, the politics creeping into what is essentially humanitarian crisis at the end of it all?
So I think first the politics of it, and the second one I would describe it more as an issue of intellectual property rights.
Right.
So as far as the politics of the issue is concerned, I think it would be unfortunate if there was an equivalence between the claims made that the disease had its origins in China, and you established an equivalence with the claim that it originated in the US. I mean, I think that there has got to be some scientific evidence, and I think there is enormous evidence pointing to how it originated in China.
Right.
Now, we will wait for detailed results to come in as to how this began in a wet market, the kind of wildlife, animal food that is consumed, etc. But there is almost unanimity that the first 2 months, the Chinese have not exactly been transparent, and I'm putting it as mildly as possible. I mean, there is little doubt that once the problem burst into the open, the Chinese did everything in their power to confront the issue, and their political system allows them to take measures of an extreme nature, which perhaps may not work in several other societies, including our own, frankly. But there is little doubt that the Chinese, once the issue broke out into the open, were able to take drastic measures. But we are talking about the time before that, when I think there was a certain lack of transparency, a certain lack of willingness to admit that this was a big issue. And so that remains to be seen. I wouldn't go as far as to accuse anybody of anything, but I think this is an issue that needs further examination and further scrutiny. On the other issue of the German company and so on, I would say that my interpretation of intellectual property rights is that if there was to be a vaccine tomorrow, even the basic laws of intellectual property would accept the present situation as a public health emergency. And in public health emergencies, it is understood that countries can actually suspend intellectual property rights and resort to compulsory licensing. And this is well accepted in intellectual property law. Even if you had a patent right for a particular medicine, if you had a public emergency situation, the governments are allowed to kind of say that, listen, this is a time where we will put public health considerations ahead of other things. So I would be very surprised if even if an American country or an American company, or American government were to acquire this vaccine, it would be unfortunate if that was only used for Americans and not for the world at large. So I'm fairly confident that this pandemic, which has been declared as a pandemic by WHO, qualifies as a public health emergency in any intellectual property law. So governments have the authority, the broad authority, to take measures to protect public health.
Indeed. I'm running out of time. So one last question to you, Professor Joshi. Very quickly, would you agree with this submission that this crisis also requires a behavioral change on the part of people around the world? In terms of communication, in terms of opting for a video conference rather than a physical meeting at a specific location, or even reducing air miles, air travel for that matter?
No, I fully agree. I think the behavior change is certainly required. And if you see, I think it's a time. It's a time for cooperation for each one of us. Like you were discussing about the intellectual property rights. I'm very sure that you know about it, how greedy the multinational companies are, how protective is, the US is in protecting the intellectual property, how, possessive even the entire European Union is. But the last thing which I come is, I think which the entire world need to know, that it's a threatening situation for the entire humanity, for the entire human civilization, and they should take a lesson from one Veda mantra which I will like to say, Om Sehna Vavatu Sehno Bhunattu Sehviryam Karva Vahe Tejasvina Madhita Vastu Mavi Dvishavai. We should live together, our intellect should increase together, and if our intellect increase together, we should not have conflict, but we should cooperate for betterment of the entire humanity. And this is the lesson the entire world need to take from India.
Absolutely. On that note, Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi and Ambassador Mohan Kumar, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. And that's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
इस बुलेटिन में हम आपको कोरोना से जुड़ी सभी अहम जानकारियां देंगे। वो तमाम जानकारी जो आपके लिए जाननी जरूरी है, जो भी अच्छी खबर है, जो दुखदाई खबर है या फिर जो संतोष देने वाली खबर है, वो तमाम खबरें हम आप तक पहुंचाएंगे।
Founded in 1855, Dharamshala, which literally means the holy refuge, is one of the 80 hill resorts developed in the 17th century by the British. Also known as Mini Lhasa due to the heavy presence of exiled Tibetans living here, it is a perfect getaway for the jaded city souls. The Tibetan influence makes Dharamshala a unique cultural cocktail. This scenic destination is the seat of His Holiness Dalai Lama and has become the center for Buddhist learning.
We like to see everything we can, you know? So that's the reason why. Maybe some want to know more about Buddhism. Well, it's a pity we can't meet the Dalai Lama. We'd like to meet him. I know it's impossible. Well, he was in France a few weeks ago.
But it's a good place to study. It's a good place to get acquainted with many aspects of Tibetan culture. I mean, this is the main draw, I think, for most Westerners who come to this area. There are many, many, many reasons to go different places in India for Indian culture, but probably the Westerners who come here are first attracted to the Tibetan culture.
At McLeodganj, the main suburb of Dharamshala, one can sample the Tibetan culture. Visit the Namgyalma Stupa at the center of McLeodganj. Or check out the large gilded bronzes of the Buddha. And the giant prayer wheels are sure to give you an otherworldly feel. You can also get a piece of Tibetan culture to take back home. This town is known for Tibetan handicrafts, thangka, which are painted or embroidered Buddhist banner, garments and other souvenirs. That's not all. Various Buddhist festivals that take place throughout the year will also keep you enthralled.
I'm here because we are staying in Mugotlang, and we wanted to make a day tour and see the area here and see the waterfalls, but also look around for the temples. We've been to the temple in McLeodganj, and just get to know a little bit more about the people, the friendly people.
Centre reiterates steps to counter spread of COVID-19 to continue in the country to achieve desired results, says India, still under local transmission mode, appeals to the people to keep on rendering cooperation in fight against deadly virus. Centre and Delhi government stressed the migrant population issue now completely under control. Police and administrative officials given specific and strict instructions to control the matter. Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacts with leaders of social and spiritual organizations, urges them to spread awareness about the disease and help with volunteers on ground. Government denies all reports of extension of lockdown period. Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba says all such reports are baseless. UP government releases 611 crore rupees on account of Manrega for 27.5 lakh labourers. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath also holds discussions with labourers through video conferencing. ICMR approves the first indigenously developed coronavirus test kit. Test to cost 1,200 rupees as against the present cost of 4,500 rupees per test. DRDO says it has devised indigenous equipment including multiple use ventilators and isolation tubes to fight COVID-19 pandemic. And global death toll due to COVID-19 goes past 30,000 while corona positive cases touch 7 lakh. Italy, Spain, US and France are most affected. All countries take strict steps to deal with the situation. You're watching Doordarshan. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and the top story at the Sawal Centre has once again reiterated that the COVID-19 epidemic in India is still in local transmission mode, refuting some reports that it has reached limited community transmission.
We have to come out of the semantics, and we have used the word in a very limited context, in a way to highlight what we are going to do action at field. Nowhere we are saying there is community transmission. It is only local transmission in this country. Let me repeat it, and we will be the first one to get back to you to explain that yes, there is community transmission in the country if need be. because if it is going to be there, we will come back to you, and through you would like to inform community to increase our level of alertness and management at the field level.
In the daily briefing on the coronavirus update, the officials of the Health Ministry said that though the battle against COVID-19 will be successful only if 100% results are achieved, even 99% rate will not ensure success.
कोई भी एक व्यक्ति लापरवाही करता है तो अब तक का जो हमने रिजल्ट पाए हैं, अब तक जो हमारी रिलेटिवली पॉजिटिव स्टेज है, हम फिर से जीरो स्टेज पे आ सकते हैं, हम फिर से फेल हो सकते हैं। तो इसलिए मैं आप सबसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि हम लोग हर तरीके से 100% अलर्ट रहें, 100% एफर्ट रखें कि जो गाइडलाइंस, जो डायरेक्शंस और जो डूज एंड डोंट्स सरकार की तरफ से पब्लिक में हम सबको बता रहे हैं, कृपया करके उन गाइडलाइंस का 100% अमल हो। हम इसमें 99% भी अमल जो है वो हमारे एफर्ट्स को फिर से हमें बेकार कर देगा। इसके लिए आप सबका सहयोग हमारे लिए बहुत जरूरी है।
Centre has also stressed that the priority of the government at the moment is to augment the infrastructure to fight epidemic in all its proportions.
हमारा पूरा प्रयत्न पहले दिन से ही इस डायरेक्शन में है और हम सभी स्टेट्स के साथ कंटिन्यूअसली उस एफर्ट्स में लगे हुए हैं। अभी हमारा मेजर एफर्ट है कि हम डेडिकेटेड कोविड हॉस्पिटल्स बनाएं, हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को इंप्रूव करें, टेस्टिंग फैसिलिटीज को और स्ट्रेंथन करें, ताकि किसी भी तरह से अगर कोई भी सिचुएशन आए देश उससे निपटने के लिए तैयार हो।
And speaking on the issue of migrant population, Centre has said that the situation is under control.
माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स की स्थिति नियंत्रण में है। सभी स्टेट्स और यूटीज कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन के साथ वॉर फुटिंग पर रिलीफ शेल्टर्स, फूड इत्यादि का इंतजाम कर रही हैं। चेयरमैन नेशनल एग्जीक्यूटिव कमेटी ने डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट के अंतर्गत एम्पावर्ड ग्रुप्स भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूट किए हैं, जिससे कि कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव एक्शन और इंटीग्रेटेड रिस्पांस हो। संपूर्ण स्थिति को देखते हुए और जो कदम उठाए गए हैं, हमें विश्वास है कि स्टेट्स और यूटीज और कम्युनिटी के साथ मिलकर हम इस लॉकडाउन को इफेक्टिवली इम्प्लीमेंट कर पाएंगे, जिससे कि कोविड-19 की चेन को हम तोड़ सकें।
Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has said that chaotic situation of migrant labourers is now under control in Delhi. He also added that these labourers are no longer paying attention to any kind of rumour, which is again a good sign.
पिछले 2 दिन में यानी कि कल और आज स्थिति काबू में आ गई है। चारों तरफ दिल्ली में सख्ती बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ा दी गई है। हर इलाके के जो डीसी हैं और जो डीसीपी हैं, पुलिस और सिविल प्रशासन, दोनों की जिम्मेदारी तय कर दी गई है कि उनको ये तय करना है कि उनके क्षेत्र में कोई भी लोग बाहर ना निकलें और अपने गांव में जाने के लिए ना निकलें। इस सख्ती की वजह से पूरे दिल्ली के अंदर लोगों के सड़क पे जाने का सिलसिला बंद हो गया है। मुझे ये भी खुशी है कि लोग अफवाहों की तरफ ध्यान अब कम दे रहे हैं।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi held discussion with the representatives of religious and social organizations through video conferencing. Prime Minister has been regularly interacting with various stakeholders in India's fight against COVID-19. In today's discussion, representatives of religious and social organizations assured the Prime Minister that they would create awareness about preventive steps to fight against COVID-19 and motivate people to stay at home and also maintain social distancing. Prime Minister Modi has also interacted with Indian ambassadors and high commissioners across the globe on the issue of India's fight against COVID-19 pandemic via video conferencing. Prime Minister lauded the stellar role played by diplomats in facilitating the evacuation of Indian nationals and urged all Indian citizens working in embassies and high commissions to take care of their families. Prime Minister also urged diplomats to have a strong coordination with the countries in which they are stationed in this crucial time of fight against COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister asked the diplomats to take all necessary steps to mitigate any problem faced by Indian nationals who are stuck in various parts of the world. And as India entered into day 6 of the 21-day lockdown to check the spread of coronavirus, Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba has said that centre does not plan to extend the lockdown. The Cabinet Secretary has clarified that government had no such plans in place of extending the 21-day nationwide lockdown. The Press Information Bureau or PIB in a tweet said, and I quote, "There are rumours and media reports claiming that the government will extend the lockdown of 21 days when it expires. The Cabinet Secretary has denied these reports and stated that they are baseless," unquote. Meanwhile, the government has set up 10 empowered groups and a strategic task force, including senior civil servants, to deal with the COVID-19 outbreak and its aftermath. These groups have been set up under Disaster Management Act. The groups have been empowered to formulate plans and to take all necessary steps for further time-bound implementation. The Department of Expenditure has issued special instructions to enable expeditious decision-making in procurement matters. Each group has senior representative from PMO and Cabinet Secretariat to ensure seamless coordination. Out of these 11 empowered groups, there are 9 groups headed by secretary-level officers, 1 by member of Niti Aayog and 1 by Niti Aayog CEO. In case of any need for guidance, these groups may seek guidance from Union Cabinet Secretary. Ministry of Home Affairs on Sunday night, that's last night, suspended 2 top officials and issued a show-cause notice to 2 others on charges of failing to ensure the COVID-19 lockdown in national capital effectively. The MHA in a statement said that these officers have failed to ensure public health and safety during the lockdown restrictions to combat COVID-19. Additional Chief Secretary Transport Renu Sharma and Principal Secretary Finance Rajiv Verma was suspended with immediate effect due to serious lapse in their duties to enforce the lockdown in capital, while Additional Chief Secretary Home and Land Buildings and the Sub-Divisional Magistrate Seelampur have been issued show-cause notice. The centre has directed states to enforce strict implementation of lockdown. In an official directive to states, the centre has asked the states to enforce lockdown strictly. The Cabinet Secretary and MHA are in constant touch with the state chief secretaries and DGPs. States have directed to ensure that there is no movement of people across cities or on highways. Only movement of goods should be allowed. District magistrates and SPs of these districts should be made personally responsible for the implementation of these directions, which have been issued under the DM Act. Adequate arrangements for food and shelter for poor and needy, including migrant labourers, is also made at the place of their work. Centre has issued orders for the use of state disaster relief funds for this purpose. Sufficient funds are available with the states in this head, that is SDRF. States have also been asked that they have to ensure timely payment of wages to labourers at their place of work during the period of lockdown without any cut. That is important. House rent should not be demanded from these labourers for this period. Action would be also taken against those who are asking labourers or students to vacate their premises. Sufficient funds are available with the states in this head, that is the SDRF, and states are told to ensure timely payment of wages to labourers at their place of work during the period of lockdown without any cut. There should be no cut in their salaries. House rent should not be demanded from these labourers for this period. This is important. And action will be taken against those who are asking labourers or these students to vacate the premises. Now, those who have violated the lockdown and travelled during the lockdown period will be subjected to minimum 14 days of quarantine in government quarantine facilities. Detailed instructions in this regard on monitoring of such persons during quarantine have also been issued to the states. Home Ministry has also asked all states and union territories to allow transportation of all goods without distinction of essential and non-essential commodities during